In the dead of night, I was abducted by the notorious flower thief. The capital was in an uproar, with a bounty of 10,000 taels of gold offered for my return. Yet here I was, having removed my veil, lounging on the couch with one leg crossed over the other, sipping a cup of wine. "I am yours now," I said. The flower thief tilted his head and spat. "Damn, she's too ugly. I am an ugly woman, so ugly that even a go in the mansion would take a detour when he saw me. But this matter is known only to a few. To those outside the mansion, when they mention the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence, she is considered a top beauty of the capital. The sons of wealthy and noble families who came to propose marriage once crowded our doorstep, but after one or two unveilings, they would turn pale at the sight. My father was deeply shaken. He no longer wished to accept any more marriage proposals. The news was tightly sealed. Not a single word of it leaked out in the capital. After thinking it over carefully, I realized that my father's reward might have been intended for the flower thief. He was quite impressed. Although the flower thief was a bit of a libertine, his looks were even more handsome than those of the young masters in the capital. With a pair of peach blossom eyes, he was utterly captivating. He just looked at me with a hint of disdain, after repeatedly confirming that he hadn't kidnapped the wrong person. He stood up and began to pack. I was shocked and asked, "Husband, what are you doing?" The flower thief remained expressionless. "Sending you back home. Absurd. Where is there a beauty who returns home less than a day after being abducted? And she is the #1 beauty in the capital, no less." I tugged at his sleeve, unwilling to accept it, and asked, "Husband, am I really that ugly?" The flower thief calmly withdrew his sleeve, took it off and tossed it aside, then looked up and retorted, "Whether you're ugly or not, don't you have any idea in your heart?" He was determined to send me back to the mansion, with no room for negotiation. After tidying up, he stood by the bed, looking down at me from above. He didn't even want to touch me. Feeling somewhat frustrated, I sprawled on the bed like a dead fish. "Get up, let's go." I turned over and continued to play dead. After a brief standoff, the flower thief lost his patience. I stole a glance and happened to meet his gaze. Filled with murderous intent, it seems he too has encountered a major setback in his career. Picking flowers after all that hardship. He ended up picking a pile of cow dung. Seeing that I wasn't moving, he began sharpening his knife, huffing and puffing. His angry expression was still somewhat endearing, but soon I couldn't laugh anymore. He admired the blade in the candlelight for a moment, then looked up at me. This blade was sharpened for me. I panicked. "Husband, what are you doing?" A wise man submits to circumstances. I got off the bed. He sheathed his blade. I trailed behind him, reluctant and unwilling. As we prepared to return to the estate, after a few steps, he suddenly halted, as if remembering something, and turned to look back. "Put on your veil." I was truly furious. It was clear that the flower-stealing rogue held me in utter disdain. He wouldn't even walk beside me, always keeping a distance of 3 feet. If I quickened my pace to catch up, he would swiftly pull away. When pressed too hard, he would even use his lightness skill to dart ahead a stretch. The night stretched on endlessly, and the road seemed to have no end. My ankles ached with soreness, and finally, I could walk no further. Standing silently in place, I looked up at the sky. Hearing no movement behind him, the flower thief, ever alert, turned to look. Meeting his gaze, I spread my arms and said weakly, "Then you carry me." The flower thief stumbled, his pupils contracting in disbelief. Clearly, this made the flower thief very resistant, but I truly couldn't walk any further. The wind rustled around us, and the two of us were at a standoff. I tentatively asked, "How about we go back another day?" After a whole night of trouble, drowsiness began to set in, and I let out a yawn. But the flower thief wasn't having it. With a strong sense of moral duty, he was determined to escort me back to the mansion. After a moment of contemplation, he spoke. As the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, you should have some token of identity for protection, right? I was stunned for a second, then understood. This guy wanted me to send out a signal to attract people from the mansion to come and fetch me. A brilliant idea, but I didn't have one. He was utterly bewildered. How could there not be? I honestly spread my hands, slightly embarrassed. Father never anticipated such a thing. As for kidnapping someone from the Prime Minister's residence, husband, you are the first. First of all, the number of people in the world who could break into the Prime Minister's residence and escape unscathed can be counted on one hand. Taking a step back, even if a notorious womanizer could enter the residence, the moment he saw my sleeping face, his wicked intentions would be swallowed back with tears. What a coincidence. Just as this fellow came to abduct someone, I happened to still be wearing my veil. How could there be such a coincidence? If this isn't a match made in heaven, then what is? The flower thief clenched his fist, his expression darkening. As the night wind rustled all around, I looked up at the sky once more and, unwilling to give up, moved closer, spreading my arms. Husband, the rain is about to fall. The flower thief glanced up at the starry sky, clearly unconvinced. Leaning against a tree with his arms crossed, he said calmly, I'm tired, let's rest for a while. You must return home today. For a notorious flower thief in the martial world to go to such lengths is truly astonishing, and I am probably the first person in history to be forcibly escorted home by a flower thief, leaving me with a rather complicated mix of emotions for a moment. After a brief moment of hesitation, before I could even set off, the pitter-patter of rain began to fall. I had come prepared, holding a large, pre-folded leaf over my head. Its broad surface was perfect for keeping the rain at bay. The flower thief stared at the sudden downpour with a strange expression, so I casually plucked another leaf and handed it to him. There's going to be a heavy downpour in a moment. Flowers smeared all over her face, confusion and bewilderment evident. After a cup of tea, a torrential downpour began outside the dilapidated temple. The flower thief stood at the entrance, lowering his gaze to watch the leaves being pounded by the rain outside, falling silent. Heaven had its way, there was no going back now. I secretly rejoiced, staring at the thief's profile melting into the night, swallowing slightly. It wasn't that I was feeling lustful, but this thief was truly handsome. What kind of thief is born with such looks? The thief sensed my gaze, tilting his head to look at me. In that instant of lightning and thunder, his face was seen completely. I silently moved closer to his direction, and the flower thief reacted as if facing a great enemy. Stop, thunder, heart afraid. The thief's handsome face went through a myriad of changes, squeezing out a comforting word from his throat. Don't be afraid, husband. Shut up. The rain stopped and the sky brightened. The flower thief finally took me back. This time, it was a different residence, a mansion. The thief had quite a few hideouts, surprisingly elegant and refined. At the end of the corridor, he pushed open the door and said seriously, I'll escort you home after sunset. Is this something a flower thief should say? I was utterly shocked. After delivering his words, the thief vanished into the mansion. I wandered around the mansion, where the notorious flower thief was said to have abducted many beauties. It was highly likely he was hiding within the estate, but after searching all around, I didn't even catch a glimpse of anyone, and suspicion slowly began to grow in my heart. The rumored flower thief was described as burly and stout, with a thick build and a scruffy beard. Many beautiful women were abducted and all were violated. This one cannot be said to be exactly the same. They are simply not related at all. Could it be that there are two flower thieves in the martial world? After searching around and not seeing any trace of people, the mansion was clean and tidy, appearing to be uninhabited. The great thief's temperament seemed aloof and cold. At the end of the corridor hung a lantern, swaying in the wind. Lanterns are common, but this one was white. Upon closer inspection, It became clear that the lantern was not originally white, it had simply faded over years of exposure to wind and rain. I carefully examined this lantern, and could even see the vibrant colors of its frame itself. What's this guy doing hanging an old lantern? In my memory, there was also the appearance of a lantern, but it was too long ago, and I can't quite recall it clearly anymore. I withdrew my gaze, originally intending to head straight back inside. When suddenly the sound of footsteps approached, I was momentarily bewildered and instinctively ducked behind the rockery. The flower thief walked in through the door and immediately closed it, moving so swiftly that it seemed as if something unpleasant was chasing him. Sure enough, there was. The door was pushed twice but didn't budge. The next second, a figure emerged from the wall. The man, dressed in black and full of vitality, stood atop the wall and said cheerfully, "Ahu, why are you avoiding me? Ahu." The name of the flower thief. Avoiding you. The flower thief glanced at him. "This is my residence. We've grown distant." The man shook his head, tapped his toes, and leaped down from the wall. It seems he's on good terms with the great thief. I cautiously crouched behind the rockery, somewhat puzzled. I've never heard that the flower-stealing thief had any good brothers. That person's appearance was completely different from the flower-stealing thief, looking a few years younger, with handsome features. He said casually, "Have you heard? The legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence has been kidnapped." To be able to take someone away under the Prime Minister's residence's defenses is truly admirable. He spoke, his gaze drifting to a few flowers blooming in the corner, a hint of surprise crossing his face. He walked over to take a closer look, then continued, "And I've heard that the one who abducted people is none other than the legendary flower thief." I clung to the edge of the mountain, holding my breath, sensing something was off. Is that how you compliment someone? Are they not familiar with each other? I tilted my head slightly and caught a glimpse of the great thief looking utterly calm, toying with the short knife in his hand. With that, the man reached out and plucked a flower, but before he could bring it to his nose to smell it, the great thief flicked his hand and sent the short knife flying toward him. He snapped back to his senses, his face turning pale with shock, and hurriedly tried to place the flower back onto the branch. A plucked flower, of course, could not be reattached properly. It could only be clumsily tucked back onto the branch, but he didn't think so. In fact, he patted the flower petals with considerable satisfaction and continued, "But at the same time, there's another rumor. This flower thief, a few days ago," he paused here, casting a meaningful glance at the thief, "has already been hacked to death, chopped into pieces." Hacked to death. The flower thief was hacked to death. Who was it that took me away? I widened my eyes, and an even more shocking piece of news came. "Ahu, it was you, wasn't it?" The great thief paused his finger movements for a moment, then casually nodded. "I happened to run into them and had a little spar. The real flower thief was cut down by him." This time I truly couldn't hold back. A violent choke gave me away, exposing me to their view. Both turned their heads, six eyes meeting, the atmosphere eerily quiet for a second. I saw a barely perceptible tremor in Ahu's brow. "You're hiding someone." The man circled around, examining for a long while before clicking his tongue in admiration. "This exquisite sheer fabric, these jade pendants with bells, this person is either wealthy or noble." He turned his head and glanced at the thief. "Where did you get this person?" The thief ignored him. This person was quite sharp. Clapping his hands and laughing, he extended his hand toward me warmly, saying, "I am Zun Feng, Miss Luo. I've long heard of you." With too much information to process, I stood frozen in place, vaguely feeling that this name sounded extremely familiar, but no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't remember. Lost in thought, I was suddenly yanked back. He shielded me completely behind him, blocking Xuanfeng's outstretched arm. If Xuanfeng reached out again, there was no doubt he'd get a beating. Zun Fen was not too pleased, swaying his body and shouting, Ahoo, we haven't even greeted each other yet. Hey hey hey. Don't get physical. Zun Feng was scolded and driven out of the manor. The surroundings fell quiet. I stared at the back in front of me, pondering for a long time, until a vague impression surfaced. Ahoo, Zun Feng. I suddenly understood, looking up in shock, somewhat unable to believe it, my voice trembling. I tentatively spoke. Who? I had heard these names mentioned by my father, more than once. This guy was no mere flower thief. He was a notorious figure in the martial world. Even more troublesome than a thief, the killer Hua slowly sheathed his short blade, looking up with a hint of surprise. But these emotions lasted only a moment. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Feeling scared only now is a bit late, isn't it?" I stared at his handsome face. Swallowing slightly, "No, I like it even more." Hua's brow twitched as he spoke in a low, unyielding tone. "You must return to the estate tonight." I was shocked. "Husband? Ha 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 ha, husband." A burst of laughter erupted from the top of the wall, where Zun Feng, who had been crouching there for who knows how long, suddenly stood up, startling me, heart still racing. I looked up to see him standing triumphantly on the wall, clapping his hands and saying, Ahoo, this is good news." Who glanced up, already reaching for the short knife at his waist. This guy had a bit of a temper and was quick to draw his blade at the slightest disagreement. Zun Feng was still basking in the sound of husband, beaming with joy. "I'll go inform the boss." His voice carried an unmistakable glee. Time for a celebration. Without a word, Hua threw several short knives, trying to block his path. Zun Feng's martial arts might not have been as good as Hua's, but his lightness skill was top-notch. He dodged them effortlessly and left, thoroughly satisfied. Wait for my good news." Hua's expression visibly darkened. He let out a long breath, and his gaze toward me turned dangerous. I shrank back a little. That look had the flavor of silencing a witness. The who struck fear into the hearts of the martial world was not without his natural enemies. The boss that Zun Feng spoke of seemed to have quite a hold over him. He looked at me for a long moment before saying slowly, "Return to the manor at once. You have no objections, do you?" How could I dare to object? I could only steal a glance at the sky. It was high noon, and the sun was scorching. The flowers blurred my vision, and I asked sharply, "What? Another heavy rain?" "Heavy rain. That could work too, but it's not really appropriate." "Wait a moment." I hurriedly pushed the door open, making sure who hadn't followed. Then pulled out the small notebook and carefully examined it page by page. Without a doubt, they were all rigid and restrictive words, but on the last page, there was a line of extremely ugly small handwriting. "If it's a man who truly pleases your heart, the above can be disregarded. Little pear blossom. Go ahead and give it a try. Mother will back you up." I traced my fingers over this line of small writing and suddenly felt a surge of confidence. It should be fine to wait for the wind to return during a brief downpour, right? The rainstorm arrived without warning, raindrops pounding the ground with a crackling sound. I pretended to turn my head, looking left and right, but I just couldn't bring myself to meet Hua's gaze. Hua stared at the downpour for a long while, finally unable to hold back, gritting his teeth and speaking up. "Don't you think this downpour is rather strange?" "Not really," I mumbled. "Summer storms are often unpredictable, so it's understandable." "Oh really?" Hua raised a hand and pointed into the distance, calmly saying, "Unpredictable to this extent." I followed his gaze and was utterly shocked. Inside the mansion, a torrential downpour raged, while outside the courtyard, the sun blazed fiercely. Not a single raindrop fell there. The air was bone dry. Hua stared at me intently. "Care to explain?" It had been a long time since I last controlled the rain, and I had messed up. Now, I dared not even look Hua in the eye. Hua turned her head slowly and said, "I wanted to ask last night, what exactly is your identity?" I have no particular identity. It is my mother who holds a status. She was the one who taught me the art of rain control. But I usually stay within the manor and rarely practice rain control. The one time I did, I made such a huge mistake. If mother saw this, she'd chase me around all night. Come to think of it. Mother has been away from the estate for quite some time now. When I was little, mother once told me she used this rain controlling technique to win father over. But her skills were far more refined, unlike me, who gets caught the moment I try. The atmosphere was extremely tense at the moment. After staring at Hoo for a long while, I stammered, "How about I start over, Hoo?" The rain gradually subsided, and after a brief pause, the sky cleared completely. Zunfeng had also arrived, as always. He vaulted over the wall, landed gracefully with a light touch of his toes, and stood there with effortless poise. The next second, a scream rang out. "Why is there so much water?" I guiltily turned my head away. Accompanying Xuanfeng was another man, dressed in white and exuding a gentle warmth, with a smile in his eyes. He grinned at Hoo. "Ah Hoo, you've done a good deed." Hoo's face stiffened. "What good thing?" He laughed heartily. "You'll find out when you get back." Hoo looked at him suspiciously. My intuition told me this might not be good news for Hoo. For me, it might be. On the journey, I received news. The Prime Minister's office has released 10,000 taels of gold, doubling the original amount. But it is not a bounty, it is a reward. The news of the flower thief's death spread, and the situation suddenly shifted to the renowned assassin Hoo in the martial world, who bravely stepped forward and rescued me from the thief's hands. Hoo became my savior. Only father could have done this, I thought. Father must have sent someone to secretly check Hoo's portrait. After searching high and low, the answer was right under my nose. I stroked my chin and stole a glance at Hoo's face, which was so dark it seemed as if ink could drip from it. Hoo denied. "Slander. This is slander." The hall was filled with assassins. It seemed I had accidentally stumbled into some kind of assassin organization. Hoo felt uneasy under everyone's gaze. I, Hoo, dare to take responsibility for my actions. I admit I kidnapped the person, and I accept the punishment. Enough. An old man slowly stepped out from the crowd. He must have held great authority within the organization, for as soon as he spoke, the hall fell silent. The old man patted Hoo's shoulder with a pleased expression. "Humility is a good thing. Who has grown up." Hoo found it hard to believe. I really did abduct her. The old man didn't take up his words, instead asking, "I heard from Xuanfeng that your relationship with the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's household is ordinary. Is that true?" Though it was phrased as a question, he gave Hoo no chance to respond, continuing, "No wonder you stepped in to help. But Who should also start considering things. All this fighting and killing leaves little room for romance." The old man slowly shifted his gaze toward me, squinting and nodding with satisfaction. "Miss Luo has grown into such an elegant young lady. Who is truly fortunate to have her." I was both flattered and taken aback. Before I could even open my mouth, my response was cut off by Xuanfeng's booming voice from outside the hall. He was beaming with joy, waving his arms and shouting, "Who, Miss Luo's dowry has arrived." Hoo slowly turned his head. I stumbled underfoot. "Father, isn't this speed a bit too fast?" The crowd swarmed out the door to chase the bounty. The hall fell silent, leaving Hoo frozen in place, questioning her very existence. The only one not lured away by the bounty was the man in white who had been with Zunfeng earlier. He stepped forward and patted Hoo's shoulder reassuringly. "Silly Who, haven't you figured it out yet? The organization is in desperate need of this bounty right now." Hoo remained silent for a long moment, his fingers gently stroking the short blade twice. "Who suggested it?" the white-clad figure said lightly. "Boss." Hoo turned to leave, and the white-clad figure said calmly, "The boss isn't here, however. He has something to entrust to you." Hua Hu paused in his steps, and before he could speak, the white-clad figure suddenly gave me a gentle push toward Hua Hu's side. He smiled gently. "Miss Luo, I'll have to trouble you to take care of me." Hua Hu, having nothing better to do, happened to hear rumors about the #1 beauty, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's residence, while sparring with a flower thief. This piqued Hua Hu's intense curiosity, and he rushed to the Prime Minister's residence overnight, eager to catch a glimpse of the beauty's true appearance. This curiosity led directly to a fall into the trap. Once captured, they couldn't be sent away and ended up stuck in his hands. The flowers withered and faded. He twirled the short knife between his fingers. What the Prime Minister sent wasn't a dowry, was it? I tilted my head and looked, actually catching a glimpse of fragile anticipation in Hua Hu's usually arrogant black eyes. He probably really hoped I would say, "It's just about the bounty," but, "Better to let others die than to suffer myself," I sincerely suggested. "Husband, just accept it with tears in your eyes." Flower paste. The organization accepted the bounty and joyfully kept me. This place is even a bit safer than the Prime Minister's residence. My father was also quite reassured, sending a letter to express his regards. Xuanfeng, never one to miss a chance for excitement, went to find a fortune teller to calculate their birth characters and select an auspicious wedding date. He was chased and beaten by Hua Hu all night. He sat on the steps and let out a long, deep sigh, holding a basket of freshly washed fruit. I sat down beside him. "Want some?" Hua Hu glanced at the fruit in my hand, her fingers reaching to her waist and pulling out a short knife, which she precisely stabbed into my plump fruit. The fruit instantly split into 2 halves. I was so startled that my hand trembled. Hua Hu looked at me with a sidelong glance and said leisurely, "This fruit of yours isn't very resilient, is it? Which fruit can withstand a short blade?" Holding the fruit, I said with grief and indignation. "Fine, don't eat it then. Wait." Just as I stood up, Hua Hu grabbed me and pulled me over. He pointed at the short blade, his voice soft and gentle. "Luo Lihua, how about we discuss something?" I looked at him suspiciously. "It was wrong of me to take you out of the mansion. But originally, it was a villain from the martial world who had their eyes on you. I cleared that threat for you." Hua Hu paused. "Let's call it even, okay? If you stop following me, I'll safely escort you back to the mansion. How about that?" As if afraid I wouldn't agree, he added, "I can help you kill one person, anyone you want." I mumbled, "Even the Emperor of Heaven?" Hua Hu gritted her teeth. "What do you think?" I shook my head and said sincerely, "Mother said we must repay kindness with kindness." Hua Hu took a deep breath. "I'm not asking you to repay kindness with ingratitude. How dare you speak like that?" Hua Hu refused to accept my repayment of kindness, leaving me rather melancholic. As I gazed up at the starry sky, my thoughts were interrupted by Zun Feng's enthusiastic voice. He exclaimed fervently, "Miss Luo, I've calculated an auspicious date for you. How about setting it for the 15th of next month?" I tilted my head to look, and saw Xuanfeng holding a red piece of paper in his hand, waving at me with a beaming smile. "Aren't you afraid of getting beaten up?" Xuanfeng didn't seem to care. "I run fast, so. What do you think of this auspicious date?" "Not bad, right? Not bad at all." I was quite satisfied and patted his shoulder. "On the day of the grand wedding, I'll reward you handsomely." Zun Feng felt duty-bound. "It's only right." I presented the auspicious date to Hua Hu to see. With a trembling hand from practicing with the short knife, the knife flew toward Zun Feng, who was enjoying a melon on the side. Zun Feng screamed and jumped away. Hua Hu lowered her eyes to stare at the red paper in my hand, gazing for a long while before taking it. Raising an eyebrow, she said, "The 15th of next month, is it okay?" Hua Hu lifted her eyelids, her smile cool. "Do you think it's okay?" Zun Feng called out cheerfully. "I think it's completely fine. And the boss thinks so too." Hua Hu frowned. "The boss is back," Xuanfeng said with a smile. I've been in touch with the boss through letters. Don't worry, Hua Hu was puzzled. Why hasn't the boss replied to my letter? He did. Xuanfeng pulled a letter from his pocket and tossed it to Hua Hu. Hua Hu opened it, glanced at it, and read word by word, "Stay calm, prepare for the grand wedding." The boss said that. What I said. Xuanfeng stroked his chin. But I reckon the boss would think the same. Hua Hu shot Xuanfeng a glance, discreetly reaching toward his waist. At this familiar gesture, I instinctively took a step back. The next second, Hua Hu's dagger flew out. Zun Feng cried out in agony. "Ah Hu, you have no heart." Hua Hu knocked on the door at night, leaning against the doorway. "Luo Lihua, are you truly prepared to marry me?" I was drowsy, my head heavy and muddled as I nodded. "Have you thought carefully about who it is you are marrying?" I was bewildered. Hua Hu, her. Hua Hu glanced at me. "The Prime Minister is willing to marry his legitimate daughter to a mere assassin like me. What are you scheming?" I studied him seriously for a long moment, then answered truthfully, "Your face, I suppose. You are quite handsome." Hua Hu was driven away by my anger. He said it was like playing the lute to a cow. Drowsy and dazed, I closed the door and fell back into a deep sleep until dawn. When I went to look for Hua Hu, I realized he had truly been angered into leaving. I carefully recall what I said last night and don't see any problem with it. After hearing me out, Xuanfeng strokes his chin and chuckles. "No problem at all, not a single issue. As for looks, Ah Hu's face is also one of the best in the martial world." At this point, Xuanfeng pauses, his gaze turning thoughtful as he looks at me. "Speaking of which, Miss Luo, after spending so much time together, I still haven't seen your true face." Recalling Hua Hu's reaction, I silently tightened my veil without a word. "It might not be very convenient." Xuanfeng raised an eyebrow. "It seems I'm not fortunate enough to see it. But Ah Hu is most likely out on a mission. You can wait a little longer, okay?" Xuanfeng lowered his voice. The boss said, "Feelings can be cultivated slowly." I nodded solemnly. "Your boss is really good. Take me to meet him when you have time." Xuanfeng nodded. "No problem. Just be careful not to get beaten to death." I sat on the steps, holding a plate of grapes, eating as I waited for Hua Hu. I finished the whole plate of grapes, spitting the seeds all over the ground. But Hua Hu never showed up. Propping my chin in my hand, I grew drowsy, nodding off a few times like a chick pecking at rice, until finally I started toppling forward toward the ground. I snapped awake instantly, just as I was about to hit the floor. My collar suddenly tightened. Someone had grabbed me firmly by the scruff of my neck. I looked up and met Hua Hu's indifferent face. He lowered his eyes, the corners still carrying a hint of ferocity, and raised an eyebrow, saying, "Fallen pear blossoms." I rubbed my eyes. "Husband, why did you only come back now?" Hua Hu let go and sneered coldly. "Who asked you to wait?" "Me," I said, hugging the plate as I followed him. I wanted to wait myself. As I approached Hua Hu, a sudden wave of sweet, cloying scent hit me, and I couldn't help but frown. "What is that smell?" Hua Hu paused in his steps, looking at me with keen interest. "Hua Hu the assassin, what do you think the smell would be?" "Assassin? What else could it be but the scent of killing?" A chill ran down my spine. I had always overlooked the fact that Hua Hu was a killer because of his appearance. This guy killed without batting an eye. As if sensing something, Hua Hu teased, "Has my husband forgotten everything?" He enunciated the word husband with deliberate clarity. I was stunned for a long moment. "Do you kill people often?" Hua Hu nodded absent-mindedly. "Often." I stared at him intently. "Is it dangerous?" Hua Hu tilted his head to look at me. "What, are you scared?" "I'm scared. I'm afraid I'll become a widow." Hua Hu got angry again. He told me that if I can't speak properly, I shouldn't speak at all. Mother said to boldly pursue the man you fancy. But she never said it would be this difficult. When Xuanfeng came looking for me, I was sighing softly because I hadn't seen Hua Hu for several days. He comforted me, saying, Who has been swamped with tasks lately. I can take you to see him if you want. Are you up for it? My spirits lifted. Yes, let's go. Xuanfeng truly took me to find Hua Hu, but I never expected it would be Hua Hu in the midst of killing. Unlike the usual Hua Hu who wielded a short blade, this time he held a long sword. Its edge ruthless, moving with ease and precision among several enemies. It could even be described as calm and effortless. Xuanfeng pulled me aside, watching as he swiftly dealt with a group of people in the blink of an eye. By the moonlight, several mutilated corpses lay scattered in disarray all around. Hua Hu stood in the center, leisurely wiping away the bloodstains, his expression tinged with impatience. Xuanfeng beamed with pride. See, Ahu's reputation in the martial world is no empty rumor. This guy, his moves are really, hey, why are you trembling? My legs were shaking, barely able to keep me standing, as I stammered, perhaps, I'm a little scared. What is there to be afraid of? Xuanfeng's words cut off abruptly, his expression gradually turning to one of terror. I followed his gaze and saw Hua Hu, who had appeared at some unknown time, standing silently behind me. His murderous aura had yet to dissipate, his eyes cold and piercing, enough to send shivers down one's spine. My legs gave way, and I could no longer stand, collapsing straight down. Hua Hu reached out and grabbed me, steadying me firmly. His palm was warm, seeping through the clothing into my skin, and I shuddered. Xuanfeng snapped back to reality and exclaimed, Hu, you scared me to death. Hua Hu stared at Xuanfeng, displeasure written on his face. What are you doing here? Xuanfeng replied matter-of-factly, Miss Luo wanted to see you, so I brought her along. Hua Hu sneered, do you have any brains? You took her to watch a murder. Zun Feng's face turned pale, as if he suddenly realized something. Damn, I closed my eyes and fainted. When I woke up again, the room was packed with people, all staring at me eagerly. Seeing me awake, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone spoke at once, each asking, is Miss Luo all right? Which made me feel a bit embarrassed. This wasn't the cold-blooded assassins I had imagined. Why were they all so warm and enthusiastic? The assassins all laughed and said, the boss gave orders, Miss Luo must not come to any harm. So that's how it was. Tears welled up in my eyes. Our boss is so gentle. Perhaps it was just my imagination. But after I said that, the smiles on everyone's faces seemed to stiffen slightly. After a few more polite words, they quickly slipped away. I leaned against the edge of the bed and slowly let out a sigh. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of a figure who hadn't left yet. Hua Hu leaned against the doorframe, quietly watching me for a moment before sneering. Luo Lihua, you're the first person to ever call the boss gentle. I scratched my head in confusion. The boss has always detested delicate and fragile people. Hua Hu sized me up from head to toe and said with certainty, he dislikes people like Miss Luo the most. Me, what a fierce boss. Hua Hu leisurely walked into the hall and poured me a cup of cold tea. Miss Luo, you should understand now, we are not on the same level. My mouth was parched, so I took the teacup and drank a sip, only to suddenly feel that something was off. The veil. Where is my veil? I was so startled that I spilled my tea. Although I didn't really care much about this face of mine, being suddenly stared at by a group of people still sent a chill down my spine. Hua Hu let out a laugh, a cold one. Of course, he looked down at me. Why are you making that face? I weighed my words carefully. Did everyone throw up? The room fell into an eerie silence for a few seconds before Hua Hu snorted. No one dares. Isn't that the same thing? When I went to find Feng, he coldly shouted at me to stop from 10 meters away. Standing where I was, I squinted at the bruises on his face and asked in confusion, Brother Feng, your face, stay away from me. Xuanfeng winced as speaking tugged at his wounds, baring his teeth. Don't come any closer, I asked cautiously. Did my husband beat you? Xuanfeng sneered. A mad dog bit me. He said I had no brains taking you to see a murder. How was I supposed to know? Seeing he still had more to say, I probed. Anything else? Xuanfeng touched the wound on his face, giving me a resentful look. All I said was that Miss Luo has a down-to-earth appearance, and who chased me down the street for it. Down-to-earth. Never thought this would be used to describe appearance. Looking at Xuanfeng's wounds, I suddenly remembered what Huahu said back then. No one dares. So that's what it meant. I turned around to find Hua who threw myself at him in one go, my eyes brimming with hot tears. Hua who pointed a finger right at my forehead, not allowing me to get any closer, and said calmly, Luo Lihua, don't go crazy, husband. I am overwhelmed with gratitude, and have no way to repay you, except, Hua who cut me off in time, not really needed. Just another reason to beat him up. I thought after this incident, my relationship with Hua who would grow closer, but clearly, that wasn't the case. Hua who pondered left and right, and late at night, she knocked on my window once again. I was utterly exhausted, and had just turned over when Hua who pulled me up. He lowered his voice. Luo Lihua, it's time to go back to the mansion. I groggily opened my eyes, meeting Hua who's magnified handsome face, and jolted awake in an instant. You've already taken the bounty. How can you go back on your word? Hua who snorted, I'm an assassin. What do I care about morals? Playing dirty, huh? Hua who sensed that something might go wrong this time, so he simply hoisted me up and started walking. My head hung upside down, my stomach churning with nausea. I tugged at Hua who and groaned. Husband, I'm going to throw up. Hua who didn't stop walking, jostling me a couple of times. Be good and come back to the manor. The Jianghu is treacherous. I kill without batting an eye. I'm really going to vomit. In an instant, the air froze solid. Hua who abruptly halted, her body stiffening for several seconds. I didn't dare to look, wiping my mouth haphazardly as I stammered. I told you, I was going to throw up. Hua who stared at me quietly, his gaze gradually darkening, holding back again and again, until he could no longer restrain himself. He forced a faint smile. Allow me to ask a presumptuous question. Prime Minister, how many children do you have in your household? What does that mean? Watching his hand move toward the short knife, I slowly stepped back. Stay calm. The Prime Minister has only one child, me. Once killed, it's gone. The short blade was unsheathed, Hua who's smile at the corner of his lips turning cold. Then I can only apologize. As soon as the words fell, the short blade sliced through the night sky, charging straight toward me. My eyes widened, and a storm of shock surged within my heart. This guy Hua who is really out to get me. This is it, I'm done for. I wanted to dodge, but my legs wouldn't obey, and I could only watch as the dagger came straight at me. I held my breath, even prepared myself to be stabbed, yet at the moment of closing in, the dagger merely brushed past my shoulder. Its sharp wind whistling past my ear and rushing toward the space behind me. The next second, a muffled groan echoed through the silence. It stood out starkly in the deep of night. There were people around. My body stiffened, and I dared not move another inch. Still standing there like a fool, Hua who grabbed my wrist. Let's go. With another flick of her right hand, Hua who threw several short knives, each hitting its mark. The scent of blood spread through the forest. Dragged along as we sprinted, I still hadn't fully regained my senses, but it didn't stop our pursuers from closing in, the distance shrinking with every moment. Hua who suddenly turned around. Is escaping for your life not urgent? Me, panting and out of breath. Hua who probably thought I was running too slowly. Just as he was about to pick me up, his expression suddenly changed, as if he remembered something, and his outstretched hand froze in midair. I stared in surprise at his hand. Frozen in place. In the end, Hua who raised his hand and lifted me into his embrace. With a light tap of his toes, he leaped an extraordinary distance. I remained rigid in Hua who's arms, not daring to move. By my ear, I heard his cold voice say, "Luo Lihua, don't you dare vomit on my face, I won't." I thought the assassin was just skilled in martial arts, but his lightness skill is also exceptional, leaping an extremely long distance. Hua Hu placed me steadily in a deep pit. Yes, in a deep pit. He said simply, "Wait a moment." Then I saw this martial arts assassin leap out lightly, drawing his long sword. Under the moonlight, the blade gleamed coldly, swirling in his hand, his voice clear and smooth, carrying a unique disdain. "Everyone, come at me together." The clashing of swords and blades on the pit crackled loudly. Hua Hu was thoroughly enjoying the fight, leaving me at the bottom of the pit wailing and screaming. There was indeed no assassin at the bottom of the pit. But a faint hissing sound, mingled with the commotion, gradually drew closer. In the darkness, my hair stood on end. After listening carefully for a moment, I sensed the hissing sound slowly approaching. "I'm going to die." I began to retreat step by step as the dark shadow crept forward slowly, ever so slowly. Emerging from the shadows, under the moonlight, it flicked out a slender, crimson tongue. I jumped up with a start. "Help!" Thunder rumbled across the sky, and a torrential downpour began. The sounds of fighting had ceased all around, leaving only the crackling patter of rain hitting the ground. After a long while, Hua Hu poked her drenched upper body out from the top of the tent, casting a faint, lingering glance over. "Luo Lihua, next time before you control the rain, could you give me a heads up, husband?" "Woo woo, there's a snake." "What snake?" Hua Hu's gaze sharpened as he leaped down, shielding me behind him. "Where?" "Hiding behind Hua Hu." I slowly opened my eyes and listened intently for a while, but the hissing sound was no longer audible. The rain gradually subsided. Hua Hu stared into the darkness for a long moment, then used the tip of his sword to lift a severed snake's body before turning to look at me. I followed the direction of the sword tip and saw that where the snake had been was now a bloody, mangled mess, with a few hailstones the size of fists scattered nearby. Hua Hu tossed the snake's body aside and said slowly, "The one who should be afraid is this snake brother, right?" I was utterly dumbfounded. Before leaving, I picked up a clean piece of hail from the corner and tucked it into my sleeve. Hua Hu's gaze was complicated. I really couldn't control the hailstorm, so I'll keep this as a memento. After climbing out of the deep pit, I had just taken a step forward when I suddenly stepped on something soft. Before I could look down, Hua Hu abruptly raised his hand to cover my eyes. Before I could push it away, he suddenly spoke. "Are you sure you want to see?" A chill shot straight to the top of my head, and in that instant, I understood what I had stepped on. My hands trembled slightly. Hua Hu sneered, "With such little nerve, you dare to challenge me." "My courage is immense," I retorted, slapping my hand away defiantly, and with a look of grim determination, I glanced downward. Rainwater mingled with blood, pooling on the ground into a ghastly sight, and right beneath my feet lay a mangled, severed arm. Hua Hu crossed his arms, his gaze cool and unwavering as he watched me. I looked up, opened my mouth, and, this bout of vomiting left me even more horrified. The sound of teeth grinding echoed in my ears. "Luo, Li, Hua, my head is spinning. My head is spinning. Stop pretending to be dead. Hua Hu is angry again. He's been missing for several days." Sitting on the steps, I sighed, thinking of the assassin from that night. I asked Xuanfeng, "Does a Hu have any enemies too?" Xuanfeng was taken aback for a moment. "Ah Hu, well, he has too many enemies. Ah Hu rose to fame at a young age. There are too many people who want him dead, but in the end, none of them will succeed." At night, I sat on the steps, staring into the distance in a daze, while pondering how to summon hail once more. My mother taught me when I was young, but I never succeeded. Hail, unlike rain, is aggressive. If I could manipulate it at will, I wouldn't have to be Hua Hu's burden anymore. But after several attempts, I still hadn't succeeded. I collapsed on the ground, feeling utterly disheartened, when suddenly a shadow fell over me, who looked down at me. And I looked up at him. After a moment of staring at each other, he asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" I replied with immense sorrow, "Husband, I can't summon hail anymore." Who remained quite calm. "Isn't that perfectly normal?" Wah. I wiped my tears all over who raised a hand to block my forehead. "Luo Lihua, you're at it again," I sobbed. Who, annoyed by the commotion, said, "What does it matter if you can't summon it?" But I looked up, my eyes brimming with tears. Xuanfeng said, "You have many enemies." I wanted to just smash them to death. Who was clearly taken aback for a moment. "Is that all you're worried about?" I nodded frantically. Who fell silent for a moment, then scoffed, "You should worry about your own safety first." I shook my head stubbornly. "You have to protect yourself too. I don't want to be a widow yet." Who's eyebrows twitched as she cut in first. "Don't worry, I'm perfectly fine." Only then did I stop. Who sat on the ground, unusually not immediately leaving me to go back inside, though she looked quite troubled. "Something on your mind?" Who responded vaguely, a bit troubled. "What?" Who glanced at me and said lightly, "Perhaps it's because the wedding is approaching, and I'm not feeling happy." "Why?" Who teased. "After all, I am still Zhong Xiongyu, the #1 beauty in the capital or something. I couldn't sleep. I want to find Mother. Mother hasn't returned home for a long time. According to Father, she is a heartbreaker. After winning Father over, she stopped taking responsibility. Not only is her attitude cold, but she even ignores him." Father was deeply aggrieved, yet he dared not defy Mother's path, for she spent most of her time not within the manor, but wandering the Jianghu. Late at night, I took out paper and brush to write a letter to Mother. "Dear Mother, I hope you have been well these days. Lihua has recently taken a liking to an assassin. He is quite handsome, and for some reason, I find myself very fond of him, but he thinks I'm ugly. My daughter is very sad." After sending the letter, I fell asleep, but I never expected how much pain this letter would bring to who. Several days had passed without a glimpse of who, and when Zunfeng arrived, his face wore a mischievous, gloating smirk, straight to the point. I knew his mood was almost certainly tied to who. Sure enough, he declared triumphantly, "Do you know what Hu has been up to these past few days?" I looked up. "What?" Zunfeng bared his teeth. "Busy running for my life." "Running for your life?" I immediately grew tense. "Has a rival come looking for you?" "Of course not." Zunfeng crossed his legs, looking quite animated. "That who has been hunted for 3 days and 3 nights. Who has been hunted for 3 days and 3 nights. By whom? By the boss, of course." Xuanfeng was in an exceptionally good mood, not sure how he managed to piss off the boss, but the boss rushed back overnight just to beat him up. Overnight, my heart skipped a beat, and for some reason, a faint suspicion began to stir within me. According to Xuanfeng, the boss lived in a secluded courtyard at the very back. That night, I sneaked in, hoping to uncover the truth. Pushing open the door, I found the room tidy and well arranged, but completely empty. I groped my way to the desk, pulled out a notebook, and walked to the window, flipping open a page by the moonlight. A full page of hideous, varied characters leaped into view, making one gasp involuntarily. How could anyone in this world write such ugly characters? Of course there could. It really is Mother. A surge of affection welled up inside me, and I hugged the booklet, rubbing my cheek against it twice. "Mother, it really is you. Father never told me that Mother would be the leader of an assassin organization." I threw myself onto the bed, quietly waiting for Mother to return, wanting to ask for a clear explanation. The bed was filled with a comforting scent, and in my daze, I actually fell asleep. When I woke up again, I suddenly met Mother's gaze. I rubbed my eyes, and she slapped me on the shoulder. "Little pear blossom. Long time no see." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Mother, why are you hiding here as the boss? It's a long story. Mother patted my head. How did Lihua recognize it? I opened the booklet. Mother snatched it over and tossed it aside, calmly saying, "This booklet is from several years ago. I've improved a lot since then." I stared at her suspiciously. Mother's eyes flickered. "Don't tell your father." Oh, it had been a long time since I last saw Mother, and I thought we would have a good catch-up tonight, but before we could even exchange a few words, she dragged me out of the mansion. Mother smiled and said, "I heard from Ahu that you want to summon hail." This familiar sense of foreboding made me instinctively lower my head and turn back, mumbling, "Oh, I suddenly feel a bit sleepy." Mother pulled me over in one swift motion, wrapping an arm around my shoulder with a gentle smile. "Pear Blossom, let me teach you something fun." How strange. My eyes won't stay open. Mother glanced at me. "I've been chatting with Ahu these past few days and picked up a few tricks. Little Pear Blossom is sleepy, isn't she?" "Ah, what insights?" "Insights on chasing a husband." Suddenly perking up, I asked, "Mother, what should I learn?" In the deep night forest, a series of pig slaughter-like screams echoed. They were mine. Mother stood leisurely to the side, occasionally shouting, "Little Pear Blossom, don't keep running away." Hailstones of all sizes rained down on my head one after another, leaving me bruised and battered. "If I don't run, I'll be flattened. Try summoning it." Mother watched from the side, puzzled. "Think back carefully to how you summoned it that day. Focus your attention." How can I focus in this situation? I frantically ran around the woods. Mother stroked her chin, pondering for a long while. "That kid Ahu said it can be summoned at a critical moment, right?" A chill ran down my spine. "Pear Blossom, Mother's here." A sense of foreboding washed over me belatedly. I turned my head sharply to see Mother beaming with joy, waving at me. I glanced up and saw enormous hailstones plummeting from the sky. My eyes widened in terror, my face paling with fright. "Mother, this could kill someone." After a night of being pummeled black and blue, I finally managed to summon hailstones the size of a thumb just before dawn. Mother fell silent, squatting on the ground and staring at the hailstones for a long while, her heart as cold as ashes. "Forget it." I wiped away my tears and said, "I did my best. Forget it, Pear Blossom." Mother patted my head affectionately. "It seems my decision was right after all. I still need to find someone to protect you." "Find someone? Who?" Before I could even ask, Mother had already waved her hand and turned to leave. The sight of her disappointed back made my heart sink. I rolled up my sleeves. "What's a little hail, anyway?" "I am Luo Lihua." I sat cross-legged on the spot for a long while, desperately trying to recall the sensations of that night. Darkness, the assassin, Brother Snake. The darkness failed. The assassin did not. Brother Snake. I stroked my chin, suddenly realizing, could the key lie with Brother Snake? I got up and headed into the woods. That night, the light was dim, and I hadn't clearly remembered the exact location, so I huffed and puffed my way through the search. Finally, around noon, I found the deep pit. Inside, Brother Snake's body was still being scorched by the sun. I had steeled myself mentally, leaped into the pit, and carefully searched around, thinking I might find Brother Snake's lair. But after scouring the area, aside from Brother Snake's shriveled body, there was nothing else. With a sigh of regret, I was about to leave the pit when I suddenly realized something was off. This pit seemed very deep. Not just seemed, it was extremely deep, with smooth walls and no footholds to speak of. "I can't fly. How am I supposed to get up?" I slapped my forehead. "It's over." I was trapped at the bottom of the pit, crying out to heaven and earth with no response, just sitting there in a daze. I sat like that for a whole day, until my butt went numb. Why did I jump down at that moment? As dusk fell and darkness gradually enveloped the surroundings, I tried several more times, but all ended in failure. Just as I was feeling disheartened, a sudden cold laugh came from above. Someone raised their voice and said, "Falling pear blossoms." This voice, I wept for joy, looking up. Hua, who stood above, looking down at me from a commanding height. I stood up and waved. Husband, I'm here. Hua, who wasn't in a hurry to pull me out. Instead, she stared at me with a strange expression for a moment. Luo Lihua, just what exactly is your identity? I was stunned by the question for a second. Hua, who glanced at me, her tone flat but tinged with a hint of displeasure. I heard that a few days ago, the boss received a letter. I scratched my head, feeling a bit familiar with the situation. Because of this letter, I was chased and beaten for 3 days and 3 nights. Hua, who said slowly, this letter was sent from your hands. Hua, whose gaze fixed on me, I continued scratching my head and honestly said, this is my mother. Hua, whose face darkened. Sorry, I just found out too. Mom's the boss here. Hua, who was pulled over by Mom to protect me, but he clearly wasn't too happy about it. After pulling me out of the pit, he just kept staring at me in silence. His stare sent chills down my spine. After a long pause, he finally asked, what were you doing at the bottom of the pit? Hail, I replied listlessly, just recalling the feeling from that day. Oh, the smile at the corner of Hua, whose lips suddenly turned eerie. He familiarly wrapped an arm around my shoulder, leaning close to my ear and whispering, looking for a thrill. I can show you how. His expression clearly suggested it wasn't a good idea. I subtly moved a bit farther away. How? Without a word, Hua, who took me to stir up trouble. Yes, in the dead of night, Hua, who led me to raid the mountain bandits' lair. We fled ahead while they chased from behind. I ran for my life, but Hua, who remained leisurely the whole way, occasionally stepping in to hold them off. Falling pear blossoms. Hua, who suddenly halted his steps, squinting at the bandit behind him who was brandishing a knife. He pondered aloud, with me here, I wonder if I might be holding you back. I shook my head in panic. What are you doing? The figure of Hua, who gradually melted into the darkness as he whispered, I'll come to pick you up at dawn. And just like that, Hua, who left. After I shouted several times and saw no one, I confirmed this terrifying fact. To be honest, having Hua, who by my side was truly reassuring. Without Hua, who, I was like a headless fly, and the bandit wielding the great sword behind me clearly noticed this, his momentum growing fiercer. Several times, I nearly met my end under that great sword. I screamed and wailed, and just as my fear reached its peak, the rain poured down in torrents. This rain poses no threat to the bandits who have long roamed these mountains. Instead, I nearly slipped and fell in the wilderness. This is not the time to fall. I was terrified, but the more I feared it, the more it happened. At the critical moment, I slid down the small slope on my backside. The bandit was overjoyed and raised his sword to strike down. At this critical moment, a familiar sensation surged up. I seized this hard-won feeling and, with a flick of my hand, the surroundings instantly fell silent. The next second, a loud cry erupted. Where did this hail come from? How bizarre. Success. I suddenly opened my eyes, the corners of my mouth barely lifting before quickly falling again. The hail was indeed summoned. But it was no different from that night with Mother. The size of a thumb, negligible when falling on the bandits. The bandits were frustrated for a moment, then raised their swords and charged again. As the blades fell, several short knives came whistling through the air. I closed my eyes, hearing only a few muffled groans, followed by the heavy thud of bodies hitting the ground. Hua, who stood not far away, wiping his short blade, after swiftly dispatching several men with deft skill, he finally turned around and said slowly, I suppose you could say it's been summoned. Let's go, keep moving, huh? In just one short night, Hua, who had managed to provoke bandits from 3 major mountain strongholds, I lay sprawled on the ground like a dead fish, utterly unable to move. Hua, who also sat down, enjoying the refreshing cool breeze. He toyed with the hailstones in his hand and chuckled. The boss said there was no way to train it, but here it is, isn't it? I gritted my teeth. Is this how you train someone? After resting quietly for a while, the sunlight gradually rose. Hua Hu stood up and patted me. Let's go. Where to? Time to rest. Hua Hu yawned, turning back lazily. What, you still want to practice? I shook my head in panic, extending my hand as well. Husband, can you carry me on your back? Hua Hu stumbled. No, too exhausted to move. I simply lay down on the ground. Hua Hu walked a few steps, didn't see me, then turned back, crouched beside me, and looked down at me. Luo Lihua, don't you dare try to weasel out of this. I'll practice with you all night, and you still want me to carry you. I closed my eyes and ignored him, planning to hold my ground, but I forgot Hua Hu is the undisputed champion of playing dirty. I lay down, and he casually stretched out beside me, a blade of grass between his teeth, saying nonchalantly, all right, let's sleep then. Before long, steady breathing sounds came from beside me. Hua Hu had truly fallen asleep. I silently poked him, but Hua Hu turned over and ignored me. After pondering for a while, I clutched my stomach and let out a loud cry. My stomach hurts, I can't take it anymore. Hua Hu propped herself up and tilted her head to look at me, my face twisted in agony. It hurts so much. Luo Lihua. Hua Hu lowered her gaze, staring at me intently. You'd better not be lying. Damn it. After howling that, Hua Hu finally reached out, hoisted me onto his back, and started heading back. Hua Hu's back was much more comfortable than lying on the grass. I lay on it, happily watching the scenery flashing by at my side. How sharp Hua Hu was. He suddenly turned his head and met my smiling lips. The atmosphere froze for a moment. He stopped and coldly retorted, "Does it hurt so much you're about to die?" My gaze drifted, not daring to meet his eyes. Hua Hu squinted and said, "Get down and walk on your own." I held on tightly, refusing to go down. Falling pear blossom. I can't walk anymore. Hua Hu was angry again, and again. After carrying me back to the mansion, he turned to leave without a word. I quickly grabbed his arm and stuffed a fresh white flower into his hand. "Isn't it pretty? I just picked it." Hua Hu scoffed. "You think a wildflower is enough to win me over?" I snorted. "Then I don't know what you want," Hua Hu said lazily. "The number one beauty in the capital, of course," I retorted defiantly. "The number one ugly person in the capital is also number one." Hua Hu didn't want to bother with me and waved his hand, saying, "Rest well, I'll pick you up in the evening, and we'll continue." What kind of devilish talk is this? I panicked and closed the door. Hua Hu truly arrived as promised, and this time he was even more cruel. Luo Lihua. "Let me be clear up front, no matter what happens today, I will not appear again." A chill ran down my spine. Hua Hu continued, "That depends on your skills." "Oh, right." Hua Hu smiled and said, "Tonight. I've provoked two groups. Hua Hu is not human." This was the only thought racing through his mind, but thanks to Hua Hu, I managed to survive under the broadsword. After a few attempts, I successfully summoned hail that could knock people unconscious. However, Hua Hu had already cleared out this wave of bandits before dawn. He said, "An outsider who witnesses your rain control technique cannot be allowed to live." Can they? Did the boss never teach you this? I shook my head blankly. Hua Hu didn't bother to explain further, lazily adding, "These bandits have committed countless atrocities. Dying by your hand is no loss. It was clearly in your hand." After returning, Hua Hu's words lingered in my mind for a long time. I still went to find Mother. Mother said, "That boy Hu is indeed very sharp, but it's not wrong either. Lihua, be extra careful these days." I inexplicably felt a hint of tension. Remembering the assassin from that day, I clenched my sleeve and whispered, "Mother, are they coming for me?" "Not you." Mother shook her head. "It's me." "Why?" Mother took out a mirror, glanced at it, sighed, and murmured, "It's all my fault for being too beautiful. Before I pursued your cheap father, I had a rival in love who was my equal, Yuan. She was a rain controller like us, but I was more beautiful. And matters of the heart, after all, follow one's feelings. Yuan pursued him fiercely for a long time but never succeeded. That's when I appeared. Mother put down the mirror and sighed, as if reminiscing about the past. But in truth, I met your father even earlier than Yuan. I came to this capital city for your father. Yuan wanted to compete with me, and naturally, I wasn't willing to give in, with just a little pursuit. I made your father completely devoted to me. I was listening with great interest, but upon hearing this, it felt like a heavy sword had pierced my chest. Just a little, a gentle pursuit, and he was completely devoted. Mother paid no heed to my melancholy and continued, so that fellow held a grudge against me, causing a scene on the wedding day. Could I, as your mother, swallow that insult? I chased him out right then and fought with him all night long. Ever since then, Rain Shadow has insisted on fighting me once every year. But in recent years, there's been no word from him. Mother stroked her chin. Who knows what kind of mischief is brewing? I nodded thoughtfully. So that's how it was, Mother. I roughly understand what you mean, but there's one thing I don't quite get. What is it? Mother is so beautiful. So why do I look like this? Hua Hu has been relentlessly dragging me to practice these past few days. And finally, after 10 days, I have mastered summoning hail. The first thing I learned was to summon giant hailstones to smash Hua Hu. Hua Hu swiftly dodged, and the hailstones left huge craters on the ground. He looked up at me, repaying kindness with enmity. Isn't this to let my husband see more clearly? Hua Hu twirled the short blade, her interest piqued. Luo Lihua, would you like to take a closer look at this short blade? No, thank you. I turned and ran. The training over the past few days had allowed me to hold my own against Hua Hu for a brief moment. But only for a brief moment. Hua Hu caught up, grabbed me by the collar, and whispered in my ear, Luo Lihua, your escape speed has improved. I dodged the blade, chuckling. My husband taught me well. Hua Hu opened her mouth to speak but suddenly furrowed her brow. I only felt a tightness around my waist as Hua Hu lifted me and swiftly moved behind a tree. In the next moment, a hailstone the size of a person crashed down right where I had been standing. With a deafening boom, it smashed heavily into the ground. I swallowed hard. This time it wasn't me. Don't make a sound. Hua Hu's expression was unusually serious as he narrowed his eyes, staring intently. In that direction, a woman slowly approached. She was too far away to make out her face clearly, but her figure was graceful and alluring. She touched the hailstones and said with satisfaction, "Success." Ever since returning from the woods, Hua Hu's expression has been a bit off. He sat on the steps without a word, lost in thought as he stroked his short blade. Zun Feng, standing nearby, quietly nudged me. What's gotten into Hua Hu? I don't know. Xuanfeng shivered. Something doesn't seem right. Keep an eye out for me. After saying that, I got up and ran to the backyard, pushing open the door. I was surprised to find that Mother wasn't there. When I returned to the front yard, I discovered that Hua Hu was gone too. Zun Feng Yu took a deep breath, pulling a short knife from her side and said helplessly, I can't stop it. I lowered my gaze, my intuition telling me that the person in the forest today was precisely the rain shadow my mother had spoken of. But hailstones as tall as a person, isn't that a bit too exaggerated? And how did Hua Hu come to know her? A mystery churned in my heart, leaving me restless and my thoughts in disarray. Yet, I dared not venture out recklessly to add to the chaos. In my distress, I drank 2 large pots of cold tea. That night, a sudden downpour erupted, with flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder. I pushed open the door and waited at the entrance for a long time, but Hua Hu never returned. A sense of foreboding grew stronger within me. After pacing back and forth in the room a couple of times, I gritted my teeth, grabbed a paper umbrella, and stepped outside. I pulled open the door and froze in place. Not far away, a figure was slowly moving forward in the night rain. Step by step, with a steady pace, He walked slowly up to me and came to a stop. I could see his appearance clearly, soaked through by the rain. He carried an indescribable scent about him, and there were several wounds on his body. Though not deep, they had become a bloody mess after being drenched by the rain. He looked up at me, and I don't know if he was dazed, but he slowly smiled at me. My heart skipped a beat. He couldn't have been beaten silly, could he, after a moment of eye contact? Hua, whose gaze finally fell on the oil paper umbrella in my hand. Where are you going? I snapped back to reality and quickly opened the umbrella, shielding him from the rain. Did you go looking for her? Yes, I went to confirm a few things. Hua, whose gaze froze, and he was stunned for a moment. Don't tell me you're going to look for me in the dead of night. Yes, Hua, who took the oil paper umbrella, tilting the handle toward my side, then looked at me with a smile in his eyes. Falling pear blossoms, truly foolish. Why the sudden attack on me? Hua, who dragged and pulled me into the room, shutting the door without a word. He leaned against the door, speaking lazily. You got caught in the rain. Change your dress, or you'll catch a chill. I stubbornly opened the door a crack. Don't you think you're the one who needs to change more? Hua, who stood in place, rainwater dripping down his sleeves and falling to the ground, clearly soaked through, with multiple knife wounds. As if they weren't on his own body, he said indifferently, It's nothing. How could this possibly be nothing? I quickly changed into my dress, pulled him into his room, closed the door, and said, You change too, and then we'll deal with your injuries. Hua, who was taken aback, You're going to watch me change? Only then did I realize I had shut myself in the room as well. I looked up. Is this something I'm allowed to see? Hua, who raised an eyebrow. What do you think? I stepped outside. Silently standing by the window and opening a crack, inside, a candle was lit, and Hua, who reached toward her waist, preparing to undress. I held my breath, my face inexplicably growing warm, and I tensed up. Will she take it off? She will. Won't she? Hua, whose fingers rested at his waist, then suddenly fell still. In the midst of my anxiety, the candle flame abruptly flickered out. The room instantly plunged into darkness. I couldn't see clearly, as I leaned against the window, peering inside. A sudden chill ran down my back. Hua, who had appeared behind me at some unknown moment, he whispered playfully by my ear, Luo Lihua, you didn't really think you could slip away unnoticed right under my nose, did you, woo-woo? I tugged at his damp sleeve. What did I do wrong? I was just too worried about my husband. Hua, who raised an eyebrow. In the end, I still didn't get to see it. When I reached out to help Hua, who apply the medicine, he beat me to it. Hua, who remained expressionless, pressing the medicine onto the wound with swift yet rough movements, making my heart race with anxiety. What did you go do? What did you find out? How did you meet her? Why did she hurt you? I'm going to find Mother right now and have her beat her up. Wait. Hua, who grabbed me and pulled me back. It's late. Elder Shen is probably asleep, and you should be too. It's too late now. Before I could speak, Hua, who suddenly tapped me on the body. My eyelids grew heavy and I struggled to say, I've been ambushed. Hua, who nodded. Sweet dreams. I was in a daze, my eyelids growing heavier and heavier, until I couldn't hold on any longer and fell asleep. As I drifted into a drowsy slumber, I faintly heard someone sigh beside my ear. You've changed so much. Don't blame me for not recognizing you. But I've waited for you for many years too, so we're even. When I opened my eyes, it was already early morning. I was lying on the bed, still tightly tucked under the covers. I instinctively ran toward Hua, whose room, and as soon as I stepped out, I bumped into Zun Feng. He let out a pained ouch and said, Miss Luo, you're finally awake. I braced myself as if facing a formidable enemy. What's wrong? The Prime Minister's residence has been smashed. I was taken aback. What? I hurriedly prepared to return to the mansion. Xuanfeng brought over a horse, helped me sit steadily, and just as he was about to mount, he somehow slipped and fell to the ground with a thud. Hua, who sat firmly on the horse, holding the reins. My horsemanship is a bit more skilled. Xuanfeng stood up, dusting himself off, and stared at Hua Hu with a face full of resentment. Could you just say it straight next time? Hua Hu tugged on the reins, and the fine horse galloped away. Arriving at the Prime Minister's residence, I hurriedly rushed inside and immediately spotted my father standing in the courtyard, his face etched with deep worry. The roof in front of my father was a pitiful sight, with one large hole after another. I walked around to the side and, as expected, discovered a pile of hailstones that hadn't yet melted. Revenge, it must be revenge. It was the room where father usually kept his treasures that got smashed. Father had dark circles under his eyes. He lowered his gaze and stared for a long while, then walked away without a word. Halfway there, he turned back, standing in front of Hua Hu and examining her for a long time. Indeed worth 10,000 taels of gold. Hua Hu was puzzled. What? Let's talk face to face. After parting ways with Hua Hu in secret, you rushed straight to the Prime Minister's residence, angrily smashing her father's treasure room. Ever since the year I was born, my father had been scouring the land for treasures, collecting them year after year, all to prepare my dowry. Just like that,
I chased after her. Why don't I remember mentioning this? Mother paused for a moment and glanced at me. Did you hit your head and lose your mind? Yuan hadn't even made a move yet. You ran headfirst into a rock yourself, knocked yourself out, and bled all over. Back then, I almost issued a kill order against Yuan and over this matter, only to find out later that you were the one who ran into it yourself. Mother stroked her chin, lost in thought. I always feel like Yuan seems to particularly enjoy being wronged. Mother and Yuan fought for 7 days and 7 nights, both showing extraordinary stamina. From the initial fear and anxiety to the subsequent exhaustion, I was utterly worn out. An untimely thought popped into my head. No wonder they only fight once a year, it's just too exhausting. While Mother and the others were battling, Father had already begun preparing for the grand wedding. The mansion was decorated with lanterns and colorful banners, and the character for double happiness was pasted everywhere. Hua Hu stood under the corridor, staring blankly at a lantern. I moved closer, and Hua Hu lowered her gaze to look at me with a smile, saying she would take me to see something. This familiar place, I sighed inwardly, as expected. Hua Hu led me to the end of the corridor, beneath the hanging lantern. When I first arrived, I thought it was the mansion of a great thief. That day, I didn't look carefully, but now, upon closer inspection, I noticed the writing on the lantern had faded, and 2 characters could faintly be seen. Hua Hu said, "This is what I wrote when I first met you." I don't remember any of this at all. What did I write? A beauty, Hua Hu said, squinting. You said you were the #1 beauty in the capital. I felt defeated. Now I'm the #1 ugly one. Hua Hu curved her lips. After all, it's the first. Oh really? Hua Hu leaned down, meeting my gaze. What hasn't changed is that these eyes are still the same as they were back then. Luo Lihua, I truly thought you were dead. I searched for years with your portrait, but never found you. So when I suddenly heard the words "the #1 beauty of the capital" from the mouth of a flower thief, I was still a bit dazed. When did you first notice it? Hua Hu looked up. The first time you used the rain controlling technique, I was slightly startled. There aren't many in this world who can control rain, and I've only heard of a few in the capital. Back then, I was wondering what kind of relationship you had with Master. It wasn't until you said that the boss was your mother that I slowly realized. That night when I went to find Master, her vehement denial only confirmed it for me. So, after all this time, you were right here, right under my nose. Hua Hu raised her hand and patted my head. Luo Lihua, you've hidden yourself so well. The fight between Mother and Yuan finally ended in the evening. Both of them collapsed on the ground, motionless. Hua Hu and I each supported one of them, dragging them back to the Prime Minister's residence. Mother had fallen asleep, but Yuan refused to enter the house no matter what. She sat on the steps, staring at the night sky with an indescribable look of desolation. Hua Hu sat down beside her. The wedding is the day after tomorrow. You'll come, won't you? Yuan calmly shifted to the side. Of course, I will slaughter all of you. Hu looked up at the moonlit sky. I haven't sent the betrothal gifts yet. Master has them. Right. Yuan's expression immediately darkened. You unfilial child, if you follow her, I will sever all ties with you. From now on, there is no need for us to meet again. Hu lowered his eyes and chuckled softly. Then we'll meet at the grand wedding, on the eve of the wedding. Mother suddenly wanted to run away from home, insisting on spending the night at the ancestral hall and returning only for the wedding the next day. Father managed to persuade and pull her back after a while. The reason was that father had seen her handwriting again. It was said that the characters on the scroll mother had sent were all written by her, one by one. After father discovered this, he dragged mother into practicing calligraphy with him all night long. If it weren't for dealing with Yuan, mother might have left overnight. I patted my aging father reassuringly. Mother never returning home is largely your responsibility. Father sighed in despair. Lihua, those characters, I taught her for 10 years, and she hasn't made the slightest progress. Back then, it was she who asked me to teach her, never giving up despite the lack of success. I patted father's shoulder with a smile. Just turn a blind eye to mother's words. That night, mother knocked on my door and applied something to my face. When I looked in the bronze mirror again, I couldn't help but gasp. The reflection in the mirror had eyes and brows like a painting, radiant and full of life. Mother, I cried out, don't tell me you've been making me look like this all these years. Mother laughed heartily. I don't have that much free time. Mother said that those who possess the art of controlling rain will look this ugly for a period of time. Until they can master the technique. Indeed, the world is fair, it doesn't let you gain something for nothing. No wonder mother was so desperate for me to practice. I should have been unable to recover tonight. But since the grand wedding is tomorrow, mother came up with a clever shortcut. With tears in my eyes, I said, I always knew that since my mother is so beautiful, I couldn't possibly have been born looking so shockingly ugly. Excitedly, I went and knocked on Hu's door. Who was drinking tea and spat it out in surprise. I blinked at him. Who froze in place, utterly shocked, and to my dismay, a nosebleed started. While covering his nose, he cried out in alarm, Li Hua, stay away from me. I stood frozen in place, not daring to speak, while mother slapped the table and laughed heartily beside me. This guy, when he was little, just because you glanced at him once, he threw a fit and insisted on letting you go home. Pear Blossom. You suddenly popping up like this, how could little Who possibly handle it? Who covered his nose, completely afraid to open his eyes and look at me. I was stunned for a long moment before bursting into laughter. Husband, you're so useless. In the end, on the day of my grand wedding, Yuan still came. Not only did he come, but he also brought a whole street's worth of betrothal gifts. Mother greeted him with a beaming smile. While Yuan, with a sinister air, sneered coldly, what are you looking at? Hu is like half a son to me. My son's betrothal gifts are no less than yours. I stared wide-eyed at the endless line of betrothal gifts, clicking my tongue in disbelief. They must have emptied their entire family fortune for this. By the time Xuanfeng and the others arrived, Hu had swiftly tied a veil over my face. The moment our eyes met, he swallowed hard, falling pear blossoms. You are truly beautiful. When Xuanfeng arrived in his white robes, his jaw dropped in astonishment. What in the world is going on? Boss, Miss Luo is your daughter. The boss is the Prime Minister's wife. The boss nodded calmly. Xuanfeng, quiet down a bit. Hu, you're hiding things from me too. Zunfeng's heart felt as if it were being torn apart. Hu lifted her eyelids to look at him. You're really noisy. Zunfeng burst into tears. Hu, you have no heart. Miss Luo too. I chuckled a couple of times. I've prepared a grand gift for you. It's not lacking. Xuanfeng turned her tears into laughter. May you have 100 years of harmony and early blessings of children. On the night of the wedding, I winked at Hu. Husband, I am yours now. Hu lowered his gaze, his face exceptionally handsome under the candlelight. He leaned down, pressing closer, falling pear blossoms. I've endured it for a day. I vaguely sensed something was amiss. What? Hu smiled. To serve you as you rest. The candle flame flickered twice and went out. In the silent night, a few faint, almost imperceptible murmurs were scattered by the evening breeze, drifting far away. Tonight is a sleepless night. Flower paste extra. My name is Hua Hu, born an orphan. Taken away on a rainy night by a woman of striking beauty. I have always been unable to resist beautiful things. That night, the rain was torrential. She walked over with an umbrella, slowly sheltering me beneath it. I thought I had found salvation, only to learn later that this rain was her doing. This woman can control the rain, possesses exceptional martial arts skills, and is not a good person. On the very first night she brought me back, she made me do hard labor for her all night long. She took all the silver and put it into her own pocket. She said I was her only family in this world, and she was saving it for my betrothal gifts. She would lead me to sell umbrellas along the way, at high prices. I watched expressionlessly as she, after dispelling the rain-controlling spell, gleefully counted the silver. She would teach me martial arts, so that I could help her kill someone in the future, the one who stole her husband. She would go away for a period of time every year, returning covered in wounds. Later, I learned that she would set aside time each year to fight that unknown woman. I told her that if she couldn't win, she should stop fighting. She pointed at my forehead and told me to shut up if I didn't know how to speak. She would never lose. At the age of 10, she brought back a girl and locked her in the woodshed. I sneaked a glance at night, and the moment our eyes met, the lantern in my hand fell to the ground. The candle flame went out, plunging the surroundings into darkness. The girl peeked half her head through the crack in the door, and under the moonlight, her eyes were clear and bright, even more luminous than the moon above. She looked somewhat flustered, tilting her head to ask, "Are you here to set me free?" I felt a warm rush in my nostrils and agreed without hesitation. Yes. I pulled out a short knife to break the lock, grabbed her wrist, and started walking out, only to be stopped after a few steps. Yuan's expression was very dark as she called me an unfilial son. "I don't understand. She has a home. You should let her go." Yuan smiled, saying she had planned for so long and would not let go. I could only postpone my plan, carrying a lantern to search for her every night. She was afraid of the dark, so I sat outside the house to keep her company. She said she wanted to eat meat, so I stole my master's money to buy chicken legs at the market, lots of them. She always liked to prop her chin on her hand, blinking her innocent eyes. "You'll let me go, right?" I swore earnestly. "Yes," she asked me, puzzled, why I was so good to her. I stared straight at her. "You're beautiful," she nodded. "I know, I am the #1 beauty in the capital." She asked me to bring a pen the next time I came, but I said there was no need, I could go fetch one right away. Without another word, I turned back and brought a pen to hand to her. She was slightly taken aback, then raised her hand and wrote the characters "For Beauty" on the lantern. "The most beautiful girl in the capital." She repeated each word slowly. "I'll remember that." She asked me if I treated every pretty girl this way. I shook my head. "No, only you." I took out the written pledge I had kept warm against my chest all day. "I'll be good to you, and you must marry me in the future. This is our promise." She tilted her head. "What does marry mean?" I lowered my gaze. "It means, I will always be good to you." She took the written pledge, her eyes curving into a smile. "All right, it's a deal." "Deal." I lowered my gaze, thinking to myself, this must be what my master meant by tricking someone into your hands. "Not a deal yet. I will, without a doubt, marry you." After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.